like to move on to Tyson now. So we all are aware of cyber risks today, and quantum is on the radar for sure. You've been advising billion-dollar private equity funds on cybersecurity. So how are they valuing their cybersecurity readiness risks, and are they actually thinking about quantum safe encryption?
Excellent question. The cybersecurity risks associated with investing right now, I'd say, are very high profile because of some of the incidents that Andrew mentioned at the very beginning. And there is certainly pressure to have cyber awareness at the board level. No longer is it sufficient just to have generalists at the board level or accountants at the board level. They want somebody who understands something about cyber. And that certainly is, there's a lot of merit to that. I'd also say that there's also probably, I don't want to say cynical, but an opportunistic angle when it comes to investing, where companies that maybe had a minor in cybersecurity are now being asked to convert that to a major in cybersecurity. And the reason being is that the valuations are higher, the multiples can be significantly higher. And at the same time, customers want that. They want to know that what they're buying, even if it's being branded as a secure thing or a secure product, but at least some thought has gone into it, because there's lots of bad security out there, particularly in the world of IoT and industrial IoT. Bad was the default setting when it came to security. And in some cases, it continues to be the default setting. So they want to see awareness, they want to see opportunities. And I'd also add that, from an operational perspective, the notion of cybersecurity is becoming more and more prominent because of changes to regulation by market makers. And if you look at the US government is a great example. The US government is so large, because it includes the US DoD, that it makes markets for customers. And they are coming out with more and more stringent cybersecurity related to their procurement. It's through something called CMMC. And this impacts not only the vendors, but their supply chains. And in the end, just about anybody who's selling a good or a service in North America will probably see questions around cybersecurity. And of course, CMMC derives from many of the NIST standards. And NIST is setting standards for the US government around post-quantum security. And while there's still, it appears to be a few years away, that's all going to trickle up through the supply chain regulations, which is going to impact the market makers, which is going to impact the companies that are trying to sell into those environments. And I think that since we're talking about quantum, one of the biggest quantum risks is not so much that a quantum computer or an effective quantum computer becomes available in an unexpected time frame. I think it's more that there's a regulatory event which requires people to have cryptographic inventories, to understand cryptographic agility and be able to implement it. And it takes them by surprise. Not only that, but the questions that they have to answer are not just about themselves, but about their supply chain. And this supply chain can be from services, like secure email. Is it quantum safe? Is there crypto agility in that product? As a CSO, you might have never thought to answer that question, all the way down to the types of things that are embedded in the components you buy from third parties. And another example, in my business, we make network devices, and we have a supply chain. And I've gone to the trouble of trying to understand where the cryptography is and how long the keys are and what is the nature of them. And I can tell you that it's a mixed bag. There's symmetric, there's asymmetric, and when I talk about symmetric, I include the hashes, not just the crypto ciphers themselves. And you have to understand what is good, what is not. It's a very complex process. And to go back to your original question, are investors asking questions about cryptographic agility and quantum safety? Not really. But is it increasing? Is it taking on a prominence in the answer that they're eventually looking to get? Sometimes from people like me. In summation, absolutely it is, because I could tell you that when that regulatory switch starts to flip or starts to tip, there's going to be a panic, and things are going to get done poorly, and things are going to break, and there will be liability. And it might have nothing to do with the failure of the cryptography. It'll be about the implementation of it. And I'd also like to offer a further comment. We talked about critical infrastructure. One of the poorest understood areas when it comes to critical infrastructure is critical infrastructure interdependency. How does one sector rely upon another sector? And how does a failure in one sector impact another sector? Ultimately, you have some critical, supercritical infrastructures, telecoms, power, and finance. And of those, finance is probably the most fragile because it is ultimately very dependent on telecoms. If the telecoms networks go down, there are no more financial services to deliver. And everything from the handshakes used in consumer SSL transactions to the keys exchanged during SSH for remote administration on telecom infrastructure, it's all using symmetric crypto. And right now, the RFPs that are going out the door, they don't even include language around cryptographic agility, let alone quantum safety. So all of these things are going to come up because, the critical infrastructures like food, for instance, and health, for instance, which have sort of a lower cyber capability and awareness and maturity, are all heavily dependent on these other sectors like telecom and finance. And if something happens to them, then you're not going to be able to buy food in the grocery store, or your health records are going to get compromised. And it's a big, complicated picture. The investors, again, going back to what you're asking about, they want to be aware of it. They don't have granular understanding of it, but they are looking for companies that can reflect a maturity in this area to reassure them, certainly, even if they're not cyber companies. And I'll leave it at that for now.